afternoon, everybody. Today I want to talk about standing in the gap. We can stand in the gap for each other, and it is often necessary that we do that. Several ways we can stand in the gap for others is one is through prayer, praying for other people. You could also stand in the gap for a friend, maybe financially helping that friend. I want to give you an example in the Bible where Amos, who was a shepherd, he stood in the gap for Israel. Now, in the book of Amos, which is written by Amos himself, at about 760 years before Jesus Christ was born, he had a vision from God, and God was angry with Israel at the time because Israel were far from God. They were living far away from God. There was corruption, all sorts of issues going on with them, and God wanted to punish Israel. So if we read in Amos 7 from verse 1, it says, this is in the Old Testament of the Bible, "This is what the sovereign Lord showed me. He was preparing swarms of locusts after the king's share had been harvested, and just as the late crops were coming up. When they had stripped the land clean, I cried out, 'Sovereign Lord, forgive. How can Jacob survive? He is so small.' So the Lord relented. 'This will not happen,' the Lord said. This is what the sovereign Lord showed me. The sovereign Lord was calling for judgment by fire. He dried up the great deep and devoured the land. Then I cried out, 'Sovereign Lord, I beg you, stop. How can Jacob survive? He is so small.'" Amos stood in the gap here for Israel. He asked God not to destroy them. A story in my own life where I stood in the gap was a few years ago when a friend sent me a letter, and he asked me if I can help him. Can I stand in the gap for him? Now, at the time I wasn't able to do or to help him with what he needed, but I was willing to help him. My willingness, and I spoke to my friend and we said, let's try and come up with a plan to help him in his situation. About 3 months later, God gave me the ability to help my friend, to stand in the gap for him. About a week after I was able to help him, his wife spoke with me, and she told me how the day that he received the help that he needed, how tears was rolling down his face. He was so thankful for what he has received. 4 days after he received the help that I could give him, my friend died. That intercession that he needed was actually not for him, it was for his wife. Neither me nor him knew at the time, 3 months before, when he asked me if I could help him, that he would die soon. But God knew, and that bridge that was needed for that gap was for his wife, to look after her for a period of time. The ultimate display of a person or somebody standing in the gap is probably Jesus Christ himself, who stood in the gap for us as sinners. He died on the cross for our sins. If we read in John 14 verse 6, in the New Testament, it says, "Jesus answered, 'I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him.'" I want to encourage you today, if you have the opportunity to stand in the gap for somebody, do that. If you need somebody to stand in the gap for you, ask somebody that you know, that you trust, if they could stand in the gap for you. Let's do prayer together. Thank you. Have a good week.